Welcome to the Surrogate's Corner with James Mahan.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Surrogate's Corner. My name is James Mahan. I'm the founder of the law firm where we dedicate ourselves to serving surrogates and donors. Today, coming off of Memorial Day weekend, everyone seems to be talking about AI. Turns out even the Catholic Pope is talking about AI. I wanted to take this time to sort of go over what I think is a very important aspect of the surrogacy journey for the surrogates that I'm finding is getting increasingly used against AI or with AI to kind of figure out what should be going on. And that is dealing with the surrogate benefit packages. A number of my surrogates have started coming to me and saying, hey, I plugged in my benefit package into ChatGPT or pick your favorite AI tool, and this is what it spit out and told me I should look at changing. What I wanted to go over is something that I think is important for you in the process, and that is to say what maybe is the AI bot that you're using missing when it comes to looking at and analyzing your surrogate benefit package. One thing you will probably realize as you look around different agencies is that the agency will give you, or the different agencies that you are shopping will give you their typical surrogate benefit package. If you don't know what that is, that's fine, but this is basically where they lay out what their usual payments are for either a first-time or an experienced surrogate. Some of that can change a little bit geographically depending on where you're located, but it's more common nowadays that the agency just has one set package they use for their surrogates, regardless of what state you're living in. In there, you're going to find things like, what is your base compensation? How much are you being paid for being pregnant? There's going to be a lot of other numbers that are in there that are important for you to look at. A lot of this we call your overall benefit package. This is what makes it a little bit difficult to compare agencies just straight on numbers, because a lot of them have different things in there that are not common or universal across the board. One thing you're going to find, and the few main topics we're going to discuss today, are going to be what your base compensation is, what that payment structure looks like, what your monthly allowance covers and how much that's going to be. And then the two other payments I want to talk about today are your twin compensation, often called your multiple pregnancy compensation, and the C-section fee. One thing also that I really wanted to do with this video is give you a chance to have me sort of explain what I would look for in those benefit packages, because oftentimes when the agency has you sign the benefit package, it will say on there that you are encouraged to consult legal advice. I have found that almost none of my surrogates do, not because it doesn't make sense to do so, but usually because no one's going to pay for that process for you. So this video is kind of meant to sort of supplement that and say, if you take your benefit package and you plug it into your favorite AI tool and it spits out stuff, what other things should you consider that maybe the AI program is not necessarily giving you? All right, so let's jump right in and let's talk about your base compensation. This is the number that normally is going to be floated out there as what do you make for being, when you're pregnant. Some of it's going to see $40,000, $60,000, $80,000. Two big things to keep in mind. One is your agency providing an all-inclusive package where that one number is like the max you're going to get, or is your agency producing what's called an a la carte package where that number is what you get for being pregnant, and then there's a potential add-on of a bunch of other payments that you could be getting. That's important just to make sure you understand that a $60,000 versus an $80,000 package may not be that different when you start looking what actually goes in there. Okay, inside the base compensations, what AI doesn't normally know is it doesn't tell you what the typical payment structures are that most agencies use. And that's going to be an 8, a 9, or a 10 payment structure. All that means is that that general number you get for being pregnant, let's just say a $60,000 compensation package, is going to be split over 8, 9, or 10 payments. 10 or 15 years ago, 10 payments was very common. One, it made the math easy. It made the check writing easy back when we still wrote checks to surrogates. And it just made the process a little bit easier to kind of understand. The problem with that nowadays is that we mostly are using escrow accounts to cover compensation payments, or even the law firms that still hold money are often using the same escrow tools. We don't really need to do 10 payments. So if your agency has a 10 payment structure, that would be one of the first things I ask is, why does it need to be 10 payments? Could we maybe do an 8 or 9 payment plan instead? The other really important thing is not just how many payments are there. The other thing to think about is, when do those payments start? The vast majority of agencies will not give you any portion of your base compensation payment until you are confirmed pregnant by ultrasound heartbeat. Most of those appointments are around week 7 of the pregnancy. And so the big thing is, when do the payments start after you're confirmed pregnant? One thing you want to be on the lookout for is if your package calls for the payments to start on the first of the month following the heartbeat confirmation, that can significantly delay what is an already delayed process of getting you paid. Because if your appointment is on the second of the month and your heartbeat is confirmed, you will not see a payment until the following first of the month after that. That's a long time. It can be 3-4 weeks depending on when your appointment is. And again, that's kind of an old holdover from when we used to say, let's schedule all payments due on the first of the month, realistically, because it used to make it easier for the attorneys who were cutting checks to have it all just done at one big payment so we could lump them all together and give you one check and do it easily. Nowadays with escrow, we don't really have to have that type of system set up. They just get plugged in. Escrow calendars it and starts paying right away. So we don't really need to have that system, but a lot of agencies just keep it because that's the way they've always done it. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but for you, it's not the most optimal thing to kind of have. So my preference, and what really should be your preference, is the fewer payments you get is better for you, just based off of math. If we have 8 payments for a $60,000 surrogate, then when you're getting those, you're getting bigger chunk payments each time, and they're going to happen sooner in the pregnancy or be done paying you further in or sooner in the pregnancy. A 10 payment plan that starts at week 8 or 9 or 10 of the pregnancy, you're going to have 2-3 payments left over at delivery, even if you go to 40 weeks, which is one of the reasons why the 10 payment plan doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There are some agencies that are getting creative here, and for those agency owners and everyone else out there who's watching, this isn't just tidbit for you. What I have seen some agencies start to do is they'll say, we'll do a 9 payment plan, but your first payment is broken up into like a half payment. Half payment at your beta test confirmation, half payment at heartbeat, and then the first of every month thereafter, the remaining 8 payments. That's not a bad plan. It kind of is nice because you give the surrogate some money for reaching a milestone that's really important, like you have a pregnancy confirmed beta. Everyone's happy and excited, but if we're not paying surrogate until after heartbeat confirmation, it can create a little bit of a lag there for what's going on. So that's one of the first things to think about. One, am I doing an 8, 9, or 10 payment package? Are my payments starting right after heartbeat confirmation? Some will say the next business day. Often they'll say 5 business days. You just want it close to that heartbeat confirmation appointment and not necessarily on the first of the month afterwards. And then usually when we have that done, the remaining payments can be every 4 weeks thereafter or on the same day of every month thereafter for the remaining 8 or 9 payments, however it is that we're doing. But again, when you start looking at the packages and you start asking the agency members about what they're doing or what you're agreeing to, I would see if you can maybe try to get that payment structure down to an 8 or 9 payment vice a 10. Okay, so that's the first big one. The next one that comes up is the multiple compensation payment. What do you get paid if you wind up with a twin pregnancy? Now, one thing to think about is that most of the agency packages are written assuming we're doing a single embryo transfer. And most of the surrogates who join a program are assuming we're going to do a single embryo transfer. So the likelihood of a twin pregnancies on a single embryo transfer is pretty minimal. I think it's less than 1%. Doctors say somewhere between sub 1% or 1.6%, somewhere in there, but not incredibly likely. If we transfer one, the goal is that medically speaking and the doctors and the parents are all kind of hoping for a singleton, which is fine. It can split. It's not very common. Those twin pregnancy payments you get are kind of associated with what risk is there to a split pregnancy and are you willing to carry it? So they have been somewhere between 5, 10, now I'm seeing as high as $20,000 for it. Again, if it's single embryo transfer, we're not really expecting a twin pregnancy, but that kind of payment is there as just a risk premium in case that happens. Again, the question becomes, okay, whatever number you're looking for, does it make sense for you to carry a twin pregnancy? Now, when do those payments start? Some will say that they'll be on the same payment structure as your base comp. Others will often say that they don't start until you reach maybe week 16, week 20 of the pregnancy. The reason for that is we tend to backload most of those twin payments because with a twin pregnancy, we do see a higher propensity for miscarriages early on. And generally speaking, the parents don't want to be paying for a twin compensation and a base comp that winds up in a miscarriage. So you'll see this kind of trend of having those payments backlogged for you towards the end of the pregnancy. Again, not a huge fan of that for you because your body is the one going through the twin pregnancy. So I often like to see it be the same 8, 9, or 10 payments starting at heartbeat confirmation when we know there's 2 heartbeats instead of 1, which is usually going to be on that 7-week appointment, and then kind of moving there on. If there is a delay in there, see if you can get the payments shrunk down to maybe over 5 payments. So if it's a $10,000 twin comp, ask for 5 payments of $2,000 each. Try to have it start closer to 12, 14, even 16 weeks, because most of your twin compensation full term clauses are going to end somewhere in that 30, 32 week range. Ideally, you want your last twin payment kind of coming when you've reached that full term payment or that full term clause for you. So if you're looking at the twin comps, again, the other thing to keep in mind is if you wind up getting matched with IPs who want to do a double embryo transfer, separate topic for another video, which we will do soon, but it's not as common to do double embryo transfers nowadays. Most doctors are kind of pushing back against it. ASRM does not like it, but some parents want to have twins. And if you're willing to do a double embryo transfer, just keep in mind that the likelihood of a twin pregnancy skyrockets. So now instead of maybe 1%, we're talking closer to like 45, 50%. And with that comes a higher propensity for C-sections, for bed rests, for other complications. So we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, if you're thinking 10,000 makes sense for a single embryo transfer, if the IPs that you're matched with want to do a double embryo transfer, ask the agency to increase that, because now we're not, likely avoiding a twin pregnancy with a single transfer. We're kind of hoping for one, and that's just going to be a different feel for you and for the pregnancy. So that's the second big payment. Okay, your monthly allowance. This is typically going to be something that you get every month that you're under contract. Ranges that I see, somewhere between $200 and $500 a month. What you're looking for is what does that cover? Some agencies will have a bigger number like 500, but it's meant to cover things like your first X amount of copays that you have, or a lot of other things that we're not going to pay for separately. So maybe childcare allowance is kind of baked into that 500 a month. Again, not a problem, but you really need to think about what do you need? How are you as a unique surrogate needing this journey to go? What is really relevant for you? And those are things that the AI tools just can't pull out yet. They don't know what is really specific or unique to you and the things that you want. So what I would say is look at one, what is that monthly comp number? And then two, start looking at what does it cover. If it covers a lot of additional things, then you want to make sure that it's not kind of at that lower end of that 200 range. You want it closer to 300 to 500, depending on what we need. And if it does cover things like childcare or copays, then you really want it to be in that 400 to 500 range, because if you start paying copays out in those last couple of months of pregnancy when you're going every week, you're going to basically eat through all of your monthly allowance by just paying for copays, potentially, depending on how it's structured. So that's another thing that we want to look at. As far as the monthly allowance goes, what you also will see is there usually is a bump up if you have a multiple pregnancy. So if you're pregnant with twins, whatever your base amount is, it usually will increase by $100, $150 a month for the twin pregnancy. That's one, just because a twin pregnancy is overall harder on you to carry. There are more things that you potentially need and get help for. There's more things like appointments, MFMs potentially, specialty appointments, stuff like that that's going to be part of that monthly allowance that we want to make sure is capturing whatever it is that we're doing. And especially if we are potentially doing a double embryo transfer, where again, you're much more likely to see those increased payments. So those are the kind of the big three: your base compensation, your multiple payment plan, the monthly allowance. The last one that's part of this that I want to do in this episode is the C-section fee. This one, again, I've seen a lot of variation recently and a lot of movement as to what that numbers look like. 2,500 was pretty common for a long time. Again, if you're getting 2,500, you really want to make sure that that's just for the C-section. So there should be a pretty ample bed rest allowance for you, maybe a child care allowance for going through that. Postpartum recovery should be a minimum of 8 weeks if you're going to be doing that, either with child care or housekeeping. Because 2,500, if you're doing a C-section, there's going to be a lot of other stuff that surgery is going to impact for you, your family, your kiddos, your partner or spouse if you have one. So we want to make sure that number is a little bit either higher, or that there's other things around it that are going to kind of support you during that process. And again, a C-section, unless you've already had one, or if we're hoping to do a VBAC, from a following C-section, may not be that likely. You may have had 3, 4 smooth vaginal deliveries. We're likely going to have another one, and it's just not very probable that you're going to wind up needing a C-section. If you wind up with a double embryo transfer, though, or someone who wants to do a double embryo transfer and then is looking for twins, the likelihood of needing a C-section is now like 75%. So we want to make sure that if we are matching with someone that wants those things, but we signed our agency package under the assumption that we were only doing a single embryo transfer, that you get the time to maybe ask for that correction or ask for that increase. That's not an unreasonable ask for a match that says, hey, at contract, they want to do double embryo transfer. And because of that, you're asking for either a higher multiple comp payment or a higher C-section fee or an additional monthly allowance for a twin pregnancy payment. Because those are all things that are going to impact you and that we want to make sure are protecting you and safeguarding against the likelihood of just a more complicated or likely a more difficult pregnancy for you that you may not be thinking about at the time that you sign the benefit package when, again, usually we're assuming we're going to be doing a single embryo transfer. So that's it for today, everyone. Thank you for chiming in. It's great to be with you. Again, I'm super excited for you if you're at this point in your journey. The opportunity to kind of get out there, find the agency that works for you is really up to you as to what you want. The AI tools can be helpful. Again, they are tools. They're useful for what they do. They can't capture everything. My best advice for you is either go find a lawyer, come talk to me, watch the video, decide what you kind of want, but then use that when you kind of talk to the agency and negotiate what sort of package makes the most sense for you. Stay tuned. Tune in next time. We'll talk about a few other compensation package numbers and important and what AI may miss when it starts looking at those. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.